Okay, so it's time to continue with this irrigation install. That's up next. Hello everyone, this is Dwayne with Edge of Nowhere Farm, and we're coming to you here today. It's the end of January 2020. So now I'm gonna go ahead and link the video here where we talked a little bit about this guy right behind me. This would be our vacuum breaker and the beginning of our irrigation system for the entire farm. Now I also mentioned in that video we actually have a professional who's helping us with our main line around the property and also taking care of our valves and some of the detail work. Wanted to have a professional do that. We're gonna do a lot of the legwork as far as the rest of the pipe and the fittings and all of the bubblers, etc. So now in order for us to do that, we actually have to have a plan, and then of course we need to make sure that we have the plan laid out on the ground. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna show you our irrigation plans, and you're gonna come along with us as we actually decide where we're gonna be placing our lines and, more importantly, our trees. So let's go ahead and get to that plan first. These are our plans, at least the way we have it laid out today. So now essentially what we're looking at here, to give you some reference, this is essentially our primary 5 acres that we'll be doing the majority of our farming on. We also have a 1 acre parcel that would essentially come out this way. So that would be where we're gonna be raising some of our smaller livestock, sheep, pigs, goats, things like that. So we're not talking about that today. What we're talking about is irrigation. So you can see our house here, which is actually behind Lori. We're gonna have an outbuilding that's going to go in here, a 1,500 square foot outbuilding that we'll have installed here this spring. And then of course over here, which is where we are, this is our well. So essentially where I'm at is right about there. So now what we're doing today is we're actually laying out the plans for the irrigation lines themselves. So essentially what we're going to be doing is we're going to be running an actual perimeter line here, or a main line. This main line is going to go up here. I've got it in red if you can make it out. It's going to end about here, which is about the halfway point as you go back on the farm. We'll also have the main line come across this way and actually tee off here, where all of our valves are going to be up against the house. So we'll have our controller in the garage. Valves are going to be lined up here on this side of the house. And then the main line is going to run across the back of the house here, all the way across to the other side there. And then it'll actually line up on the upper corner there where you kind of see that blue squiggly line meet the red line. And then we'll have a few things going on from there. So that'll be our main line. Now we will also eventually extend the main line all the way to the back of the property, but for now we're going to terminate it at about the halfway point. The reason for that is because the majority of our water usage will be here on that front 2.5 acres or so. So now what we'll also be doing today, besides establishing where the main lines are going to be, is we're also going to be establishing where our primary orchards are going to be. We're going to have it actually flank the entire side. We'll have 3 rows of orchard here on this side, and we'll have 3 rows of orchard here on this side. So we're a little off with our original drawing, but essentially that's what's going on. And then we will have an area back here, which would be our grapevines and our garden beds. Now also, we're going to take trees across the front. All of the trees across the front of the property will be evergreens. So those will essentially be all of our citrus trees because of course they stay green. Lori was real specific on wanting green when people drive up, because you would drive up into the farm this way. So essentially what we're doing today, and what you guys are going to follow along with today, is we're actually laying out on the ground where we'll be installing all of the irrigation. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and figure out where our main lines are going to need to be. So let's slide over to the west side of the property, that side, so we can do some measurements to figure out where our main line will be. Okay, so here we are, we're on the west side of the property, and what you see behind me here will actually wind up being our primary access to the back of the farm. So the first thing I need to do is actually establish this road that we're gonna leave, because we wanna make sure that we can have emergency equipment or emergency responders if necessary, and also wood chips. So wood chip deliveries, soil deliveries, things like that. And then of course access to our back pasture, which is where we plan on keeping cattle. So we're gonna give ourselves a 12-foot road road, essentially, before we start marking off areas where we're gonna have irrigation lines. So the first thing I'm gonna do is establish our 12-foot road, and then I'm gonna go ahead and measure from there and start figuring out where our fruit tree lines are gonna be. So what I'm gonna use is I'm gonna be using a couple of concrete stakes, I'm gonna use some orange line, some marking line, and of course a hammer. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that done, measure this off so I can establish this road, and then we can actually come back and figure out placement as far as spacing for our irrigation lines. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this work done now. Okay, so about halfway there, we're establishing where our main line will actually be, which will be right on the edge of this 12-foot drive. 12 foot is the standard spacing for a highway lane. So we figured 12 feet's enough to get emergency vehicles and that type of thing, and wood chip deliveries and all that great stuff back here onto the farm. So what we're doing is we're putting the main line right on that 12-foot line. So that will be kind of the delineator between the drive and of course the orchard, which will be right on the other side there. So I've got 12 feet marked across here. So now what I need to do is go all the way back down to the front of the property so we know exactly where that main line is going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and get that back up front here. Okay, so we have our main line established here. So this is as straight as it's gonna be. And essentially, if Lori wants to pan that way, you get an idea of where we're at. So we have our chicken coop and run here. So if you guys remember where the plans were, essentially we're gonna have our orchard starting behind me here. So we don't want it too far off of this path. We'd like it to be nice and tight because essentially for us, this is kind of zone 1/2 for us on the farm. So we want to keep it as close to the house as we can, but give space for our fruit trees. So I've got some blue paint here. My heart's fluttering just a little bit because this is the beginning of the real deal. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark the line here where we're gonna tee off and then take the line all the way down to the end so I know where my main line's gonna go. So here we go. There it is. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and go down this line here and draw a nice dotted line all the way down. Oh, I have my corner, so I know that my main line goes back that way. Lori and I just measured it off. We know we have 207 feet between this T-post here, where the main line crosses across the center of the property, and the end of where we're gonna finish the main line right now, which is gonna essentially designate our orchard on this side of the property. Now, this side of the property is gonna have 36 trees total. So what Lori and I are gonna go ahead and do now, kind of doing the math, we know we have 12 trees that need to get in here, so we're essentially going to designate a 16-foot square to allow that tree to grow in. So what Lori and I are going to go ahead and do is we're going to flag out our first row and see if we did the math right. I think in the end we should wind up with some space at the end, which would be great because that gives us space for more trees, of course. So let's go ahead and get to flagging. Okay, so we're done. We have our first 12 trees in the ground. Okay, maybe not trees, but in my mind, I see trees. So we've got our flags set. So wound up with plenty of space on the back side. So what we need to do now is we actually are gonna need to get to our next row. What we are gonna do is we're gonna offset it. So we'll have the trees on this next row 16 feet in to start. So they'll essentially be an offset right in the center of these trees. So they offset this way. It'll make a lot more sense when you see them. But essentially what we have is we've got our 16-foot square. We are going to give a 4-foot walkway or a path between the orchard rows, and that will keep clear. Now, one thing we learned very quickly at the other property is because we have those wood chips on the ground, those have a tendency to do a great job of storing water. So not only from irrigation, but also from the rains that we have. It soaks that water right into the wood chips, eliminates the majority of the evaporation from those trees, and then of course, because water's sitting in there, it does infiltrate into those rows between our orchards, our orchard rows, and those turn nice and green. So now I will have a ride-on mower. I'm learning quick. Walking is not good. So I'll have a ride-on mower that's going to wind up being 46 inches wide. So a 48-inch path should give me plenty of space to take one zip down there to get that mowed each time we have grass a little too high. In addition, we do have a narrow chicken tractor, so we can also tractor chickens down that space between the orchard rows. So what Lori and I are gonna do is we're gonna get started on the next couple of rows. Once we're done, we'll come back to you. Okay, so we're done. So we actually have this side done. Hopefully you guys can make out the flags behind me, but we have 36 trees essentially plotted out here, and we haven't decided exactly which varieties are gonna be on either side of the farm. However, plenty of sun exposure. You guys always ask about full sun. Yep, full sun. So now what we need to do is we need to do the exact same thing we just did here over on the other side of the property. So Lori and I are gonna go through the exact same steps you just saw here. We're just gonna do it on the other side of the property so we can get that staked out. Then we can get our irrigation lines drawn in, and we gotta hustle because we're running out of daylight. Okay, so here we are. It's actually a week later. We got a few things done last weekend that we didn't film, but here we are a week later, and we're actually 4 or 5 days away from getting irrigation started. So what we did is we came back on the other side of the property. So we're now on the east side of the property, and this is the east orchard that you'll be looking at here. What we have marked here, whether you can make it out or not, I'm not sure, but we have our marking line here. So we have our straight line here, and we have it staked off at the end of the orchard run here. So what we're doing is we're running our main line down through the middle of the orchard. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take and go ahead and mark off the main line down through this orchard row here. I have 2 of them, so I've got it staked off here. I've got another one staked off over there. So now what I'm going to do is get to marking. One last thing I want to do is give a shout out to my son who is saving our backs today, literally. Our marking stick that he suggested getting was broken last weekend, so we got a new one. So it's going to be a lot easier to get down this thing and mark this line off. We got those all marked out, so whether or not you can see it, I'm not sure. There's 2 stakes down at the end there. The middle one would be where the end of this irrigation line is going to be. So the way we have the irrigation set up, we'll go over in detail in another video, but for the marking purposes and getting it installed, what we're going to work on now, we've got our main line coming down. Then what we need to do is get over into the ring of the tree. You remember when we have our trees, we set them up as donuts. So we're going to have a donut around the tree itself so water doesn't actually go up against the trunk. And it's going to be lower than ground level, so we're going to dig down and basically dig a ring around it, build up a berm. Now we are going to use bubblers on this property. One of the advantages to having our own well is we don't have to be concerned with consuming a lot of water at any given time and upsetting neighbors. So we're going to take advantage of that and go ahead and use bubblers for these. We have half-gallon bubblers. I'll get into the details of pipe sizes and stuff like that in another video, but we are going to have a single bubbler in each one of those rings. So what we're going to do, I've got a 5-foot piece of EMT pipe right here. We're going to essentially lay this down on the ground so we know we will be about 2 to 3 feet into that ring around the tree and fairly centered in that ring around the tree so that we can irrigate that ring. So what Lori and I are going to do now is we're going to go through and measure off with blue paint a line that's 5 feet so we know where to go ahead and end our trenching in each one of these tree rings. So we're going to knock that out now. Okay, so it's actually the next day, and we spent all day yesterday right up just about till dark getting everything laid out. For the most part, we got that done. First thing this morning, we went ahead and totaled out and calculated all of the pipe we were going to need to get. Stopped at Home Depot today, got some fittings, ordered some more fittings online, got a ton of pipe. We're going to actually do a video where we cover all of the supplies, pipe sizes and that kind of thing before we get started. So today is Sunday, February 2nd, and our plan is to start trenching this Thursday and actually working Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And what we're going to try to do is show you as much of this as we possibly can. But to wrap up this video, I want to kind of show you what we have laid out as far as the different types of watering we're going to do. So this one, we really focused on the primary orchards, which are 4 different sections. We have the 2 orchards in the back here, which will be our deciduous trees. So all the trees that are going to lose their leaves, we have further back on the property. The front of the property, we have another area, which is going to specifically be for citrus. So what we wanted to do is we kind of wanted to show you how we have this laid out as far as the way we're going to be irrigating. So let's go ahead and take a look at this side. This is the west side of the back orchard. So we have the west side orchard. We're going to kind of show you how we have these 3 sections laid out so that we're ready for trenching and install this week. Okay, so what you see behind me here would be the 3 rows. So we have a single line that's going to come down here, and this is going to branch off to one side. So it's going to basically water these 12 trees here, and then the line's going to continue back to the back of this area on the property. We've designed this so that we have 12 more stations basically, or 12 more trees that we can put onto this row to kind of go across the back of this front half of this 5-acre section. And then over here we have a single line that'll come through and feed 2 sets of trees for a total of 24 trees on this line, and that will max out our line. So what I want to do now is kind of show you how we're going to be branching off and measuring out the distances as far as each individual tree is concerned. So here we are where we have the single line that's going to go to the back. By the way, this line here is about 200 feet long. So we have 2 branches. They're going to branch off on either side. So we've got a branch here that's going to lead over to a tree, and then we have a branch here. So the trees are offset. Each tree is going to get about 16 feet square. That's the total amount of spacing per tree that we're giving. And then each row is offset, so it kind of fills in real well as you're looking at it from one side to the next. So coming off of the main pipe here, we have an extended pipe here that's going to go out to our bubbler, which is going to be right here. So this will give you an idea of spacing. That's where the tree is going to be, where that flag's at. That tree is about 5 feet from where this bubbler is going to be. So a lot of times we're asked, you know, how far away do I put the bubblers or the drip irrigation, etc. And you want to make sure you're watering away from the tree, because you're encouraging the tree to come out and extend its roots out. So obviously we'll do our donut shape, we'll show you all that stuff, but we have this laid out so that we have the riser. It's going to be here. It's going to have a half-gallon bubbler on it. The tree itself will be planted there, and it'll fill in this ring to water that tree. So for the most part, we're ready. We've got a couple other small things. In fact, one of them's kind of funny. We came back out. These flags have been in the ground for a week. And as you guys know, we have open range cattle here. Well, obviously we had a baby cattle that didn't understand that you don't eat these flags, because we were missing 4 flags when we came out yesterday. 3 we found just kind of strewn out, and another one was just about completely eaten. So maybe a little indigestion on a cow there, but we came back. We've got paintings here. We want to make sure that we're ready as far as getting this install done this coming week. So that's about it for this episode. The next one that we're going to show you is going to be all the materials. We're going to talk about exactly how we've got this laid out, the pipe sizes and diameters. We've got all that stuff we're going to cover with you guys and show you kind of some of the numbers, but that is the next episode. So just want to thank you for joining us today. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. Questions or comments, leave those in the comment section down below. Instagram and Facebook, we post content there you won't see here on the YouTube channel. And our Amazon shop, I'll leave a link down in the description. That's a free, painless way to help support the channel. If you start with that link, it doesn't matter what you buy, it helps us support us here. So just want to thank you for joining us today and remind you, if we can farm on the edge of nowhere, so can you. Where we'll have all of our valves set up. We'll continue the line essentially, no, that's not right. This is the west side of the house. No, it's not. It's the east side. And we've got a hen laying an egg. It's a farm.